All right, thanks everybody for joining us. I'm just going to go over a few logistics to let you know a little bit about the program, a little about these capstone projects, the format, and then I'm going to call up our presenters and we can begin from there. We have several graduates of this program. Raise your hand if you graduated from LGP. See that? Impressive, right? So for those of you who are new or can't quite remember, Leadership Growth Program is designed as a pipeline for leadership for the portfolio, for the university. It is a challenging program. It is at times stressful, and it is not the kind of leadership program that is designed to make executives feel good over a course of a few weekends. It is really about developing people as leaders. It's not a niche leadership program. Ideally, we want people to stay here because when they get through this program, they're really well equipped to be effective and ethical leaders. But if they choose to go elsewhere, these leadership skills and competencies that they learn over these 6 months are valuable anywhere they decide their career takes them. The capstone projects are the culmination of these 6 months of development. And they also are not academic exercises. Several of the projects have actually been implemented in the past, and these proposals are designed in a way so that they actually can be implemented. They have the potential to create a lasting positive impact, and they really sort of highlight how much potential we have in this portfolio for leaders. With that, I'm going to introduce our first presenter, Jed Krieger. Come on up.
Hey everyone, thank you for coming today. My name is Jed Krieger. I'm a senior software developer with Technology Resources, and I want to talk today about championing staff creativity, leveraging the intellectual property created by staff for innovation and commercialization. So the university, first of all, is often conceived as supported by 3 pillars. There are faculty and researchers. They discover things, they invent, they teach, and our students learn and question and take their knowledge out into the world, and staff who work in a diversity of areas to support the day-to-day operations of the university. And what unites all these groups together is the mission of the university. What starts here changes the world. But how does that happen? Well, for faculty and researchers, there are numerous offices and initiatives on campus to help them along this path. There's the Office of Technology Commercialization, the Austin Technology Incubator, and many others. Students also can avail themselves of similar opportunities. There's the Office of Undergraduate Research, the Disrupt Texas Pitch Contest, and many, many others. And for staff, well, there aren't many obvious pathways where they can do this. The question then arises, well, is there a need? Is the work that staff do, is it useful to anyone else in the world? So let me bring up an example that just happened. EHS was going to purchase a system to track incidents and injuries, but due to COVID budget restrictions, that plan was tabled and they decided to partner with Technology Resources to build something in-house. This application was then shown to other institutions, the University of Georgia, UT Health Houston, among others, and the response was amazing. They said, this is better than what we were going to buy. Can we have this? Can you host us? Can we buy this from you? And the answer was, well, we don't know. We don't really do that. I don't think so. We're not sure. And that was the end of that story. And that was not satisfying to those other organizations who really saw something they needed and they wanted. And it wasn't satisfying to the staff members involved who couldn't say for sure how to move forward with this. So how can we remedy this? Creating an Office of Staff Innovation would help guide staff members, departments, and their projects through a commercialization and innovation process similar to those other offices and help them bring their work out into the world. This would begin with hiring an employee who would be dedicated to staff innovation experts and would work with subject matter experts to come up with a series of parallel recommendations, but focused on the needs of staff and the needs of the department. So what are the benefits? Well, for the university, staff members create an enormous quantity of intellectual property, and it serves our community extremely well. But more can be done with it, and there's a desire for it in the world. Additionally, providing these opportunities can offer recruitment and retention bonuses, and it would allow for the university to engage in strategic partnerships and gain prestige by sharing academic, administrative, technology, and systems with other organizations. So for staff, what are the benefits? Well, it would allow staff to consider their work with an innovation mindset. What other things can be done with what they're creating? How can it be developed further? How can it be developed differently? And that can involve all sorts of opportunities for professional development. Additionally, staff members could share what they make with organizations out in the world doing social good and partner with them to help them in their mission. And of course, there are financial rewards possible that staff members, the university, and sponsoring departments would be able to share. So, what's the plan? Well, first, after hiring somebody to helm this office, we need to collaborate with those other offices and institutions on campus to come up with a series of pathways and recommendations for staff members, depending on what the nature of the intellectual property they create is and how they want to share it with the world. Next, there needs to be an education effort. Put up a website, meet with people in person, talk to them, walk them through the process, show them how it works, that it is possible. And third, help them evaluate their projects, determine what the best distribution channel is, fill out the paperwork, the licensing agreements, the patent agreements, and then help them launch their projects out into the world. So I want to leave you today with the idea that the work that we staff members do here is significant, and it matters, and it powers the university, and it satisfies the needs of our clients. But it can do so much more. It can move beyond the boundaries of the 40 acres and have a huge impact on the world. Thank you. All right, let's have some questions. In the back, sir.
You mentioned a technology example. Are there, that seems kind of obvious. Are there other examples of staff innovations?
Oh, well, yes. Are there other examples besides technology? Just to go for a minute, just a personal thing, as I've gone through and talked to people about this and done research on this topic, almost everyone, every staff member I've talked to has a story about a project that they've worked on or something that they've built that they thought they had this very same thought to, and they didn't know what to do with it. But yes, there are learning materials, training materials, business processes. There are manufactured items, tools that we use to do our jobs. I mean, there's such a diversity of areas that campus works in. I can't even imagine all the possibilities.
So if somebody comes up with an idea or a process or program that they want that they put out there to do this, is there some framework and vision to be in place to help those units or organizations in the university put that stuff out in the world? Is it going to be an extra thing that they have to take on to administer these programs that become an outside process?
Well, I know that the Office of Technology Commercialization handles a lot of the legal paperwork for licensing agreements, and they help structure those, and for patents and copyright and any kind of intellectual property agreement. So they would definitely help with that portion of it. And any additional support that might be needed for something that's released can be built into the contracts and into the licensing agreements to provide funding for that continued support. Okay, I don't have any more time for questions, but I would be thrilled to talk to anyone who wants to. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Wilson. I am a hazardous material manager with the Environmental Health and Safety Department. I wanted to go ahead and talk today about tracking chemical risk by automating chemical inventory management to save time, resources, and lives. Before I go ahead and talk about this, I want everyone to go ahead and put themselves in the position of either a laboratory manager or a manager that works with hazardous materials. You get a report from a coworker that a spill has occurred in one of your storage areas. And it's currently contained in the space, but as I tell you where it is, you start to realize it's a storage location that has a bunch of hazardous materials, poison inhalation hazards, corrosives, pyrophorics, reactive materials. So you go ahead and follow the emergency procedures that you know. You give EHS a call, provide them the information. From there, they ask you to go ahead and vacate the space until they can further assess, and they ask you to gather more information. You start to gather that information so you can inform first responders who are actually coming to deal with the incident. Part of this is getting your chemical inventory together and providing that to the first responders. It's critical information so that they can identify the hazards associated with it. Now, the thing about this is we don't actually have to imagine because it's happened on campus before. In this instance, AFD was called because the hazards exceeded the response capabilities of environmental health and safety, and we needed outside assistance. Based on the chemical inventory, we didn't really quite have enough information to appropriately respond, and they were given this and had to deal with it. From the information provided, they went ahead and responded, taking care of the chemical and securing it. But what they came upon was a refrigerator, and a refrigerator filled with hundreds of chemical items, in which they had to go ahead and identify the hazard, isolate it, and package it. Now, it's a little hard to see, so bringing it out to make it a little easier for everyone. Now, the thing about this is it ended up costing the lab about 24 hours of time where they were down, which is a pretty quick response, but it also had $75,000 in estimated expenses and losses through loss of chemical inventory, disposal costs, equipment loss, and time down. Now, after the incident, when going through the chemical inventory and actually disposing of all of the materials, we found out that approximately 30% of the inventory wasn't actually even in the refrigerator. So it was missing, it wasn't correct. Then we found out that about 100 other chemical items were in this refrigerator that weren't even listed. We found out that part of that was because those materials were in another location that they had to transfer over and didn't have the time to update their inventory. It takes a lot of time to manage an inventory. It's a lot of information and it's difficult. So, what is chemical inventory management? Chemical inventory management is the chemical life cycle, and it starts at purchasing and procurement. When you procure the chemical, you receive it and you store it on site. When you store it, you of course enter it into your chemical inventory. This is currently a manual process in which you have to enter in the individual chemical name and all of the data points associated with that. There's a lot of information for all of the chemicals on campus. And of course, there's handling and use. You pull the chemical out to use it and return it. There's cleanup associated with it. And of course, at the end of the day, disposal once you've actually used all of the material. And for some of the chemicals, then of course, you need to replace it. Each step you're interacting with your inventory, and a lot of it is human input. And the problem with human input for something with this many data points and this much management is we're prone to error. About 1% to 4% for data in general is the error rate for people. And on campus, that's a lot because we have about 250,000 chemicals on campus at any given time. Anywhere from 250 to 10,000 items could be misidentified in terms of their location, the hazard, or the material. So what can we do? What can we do to improve this process? We can begin by incorporating some form of automation to remove the human entry or input into this. We can do that by getting the procurement data, which is something we already have available when we purchase the information or purchase the chemical, and importing that into our current chemical inventory management system. Of course, that would require our purchasing system and the chemical inventory system to be able to talk to each other, but the data is there and a process can be developed for that. Once you have that, you at least have the information established in the chemical inventory and remove one point source of error. Then tracking it throughout the entire life cycle, you need to incorporate some kind of unique identifier. In this case, barcoding would be appropriate so you can track it through its entire life cycle and make sure once it's actually disposed of and removed, it's also out of your inventory. So where do we really stand right now? On campus, it's a lot of manual entry for chemical inventory management. And in some cases, the chemical inventory management system isn't used in favor of another inventory management system because it doesn't necessarily meet the needs of the individual. But we also have some good examples in which, in the College of Engineering, they've actually adopted barcoding. And they've taken this upon themselves to start barcoding their inventory to help with tracking these things throughout their entire life cycle. So it's important that we take this good example and expand upon it and make it better for everyone at the university and help make sure that everyone can get in compliance with this. So what does it take? It takes approximately $280,000 to $675,000 to go ahead and implement this. This includes personnel time, PPE for the individuals doing the barcoding equipment, and of course, project manager here. And it could take anywhere from 27 to 45 months. And that would also depend on whether or not the inventory that we currently have in place actually can meet the needs of all of the individuals that would be responsible for maintaining and keeping that inventory up to date. So if the project was to begin this September, the first thing that we need to go ahead and do is identify the stakeholders. Those stakeholders include anyone that interacts with hazardous materials on campus, either through use, purchasing, procurement, or the management of the inventory. It'd be important to select a project manager so that they can work with the stakeholders to help identify key goals and requirements for this project, and also to make sure things stay on track, because currently our staff is overextended with a lot of the projects that they're already dealing with, and this would just be one extra item. The next thing they can also do is hire staff to actually bring the inventory up to compliance and making sure that we actually have inventoried all of the chemicals on campus. It's a long process. It's 250,000 chemical items. It would take a lot of time in order to actually get up to date. And of course, they would help with the implementation part of this, making sure that they're actually able to go ahead and get this process pushed out. And the project would be completed approximately in June or so of 2025. And again, this depends on whether or not the chemical inventory system that we currently have meets the needs of what we have, or meets the needs of our organization. So really, I feel like we have an opportunity here, an opportunity to improve upon a process that's a requirement by state law and regulations in order to maintain a chemical inventory. And one of the things that we, in my department, that we mention is that the university kind of runs on luck. And the unfortunate thing about luck is that luck is a finite resource, and we really don't know how much time we have left with that amount of luck. Incidents will keep happening, that's a given. But we can prepare ourselves and make changes for better chemical inventory management through automation to save time, resources, and lives. Thank you. Now I have 2 minutes for questions. Yes.
Considered like a base approach to do a pilot test to get the program going and establish, have the lessons learned, and then be able to base it in the areas by priority?
Okay, so starting a pilot program as a phased approach before implementing it across the board. So that is definitely a point of consideration. The nice part, at least for a portion of this, the barcoding, it's already been implemented and some of the practice has been done for the College of Engineering. So we have a pilot program there and we have some lesson learned and ways to go ahead and improve before passing that on. Now, the procurement step, of course, getting that information over to the chemical inventory, that process hasn't quite been worked out and would definitely need to be run in a test environment before bringing it to the entire university. Yes.
Do you have any estimate on what it would cost the university if we were on a violation of some kind of health and safety standards?
Sure. An estimate of cost for a violation of health and safety standards. So it's a little bit of a hard question because, of course, those fines vary and depends on severity, quantity, and I guess a degree of negligence depending on the agency and what they fine. Generally, those fines are around $13,500 per violation per day, and they can go up, of course, depending on the severity of them. But if they're counting per violation, every inventory on campus, if that was found to be in violation. We have over 250,000 chemicals. We have thousands of end users and locations. Those numbers could really stack up quickly.
What counts as a chemical that needs to be tracked on campus?
So at the end, what counts as a chemical that needs to be tracked on campus? So at the end of the day, all hazardous chemicals on campus need to be tracked in a chemical inventory to maintain compliance with the hazard communications requirement. Now, a lot of people will also track their non-hazardous chemicals because it's helpful for them to maintain their inventory and know where those materials are too for day-to-day use. Okay, and unfortunately, that is the last question I have time for, but I'm more than happy to talk with anyone during our break period or after this. Thank you.
This proposal is about adjusting the project plan that is already in place for the mainframe process design to make sure so that we could see a positive impact sooner and make sure that there's a positive increase down the line. Right now, D2I and RQ are building up the data hub, which will act as a foundation for the data transformation. This proposal is to make sure that a proper foundation is in place before we even build out the infrastructure, to speed up the project plan and to help assist the university's transition. This foundation is being created for many reasons, one of which is communication between applications. As UT's data becomes more robust and complex and our mainframe continues to lag behind, this will cause issues moving forward into the future. Case in point, Define and Cognos. Define is our mainframe, where our raw data resides, and Cognos is our data query, where we're able to build out the reports. On any given day, many financial analysts and accountants have to deal with these two applications and build different reports that sometimes take more time than we realize. When we look at, as a financial analyst or accountant, there are four main things that we really want to look at for a transaction. How much, the date of the transaction, for what, and to or from whom. When we run a report, we're only given 3 of the 4, so we're missing a lot of data. We don't know who we're paying or who's paying us. When we run a report in Cognos, and we figure out, say, for example, a networking transaction for 3 years from now or 3 years ago, we want to figure out what accounts we charge. We are missing one of the main aspects of the transaction. We'll have to go into Cognos through a litany of commands to find out there are 3 different accounts through 3 different units that we had to charge. This will lead us back into Cognos, which will have to run another report just to get that information. And as you can see, this adds up. Compared to a perfect situation, this report should take 5 minutes max. With all these steps, would have to combine it within Excel. This could take at least 10 times longer, which is honestly is an inefficient use of a finite commodity that we call time. And analysts and accountants should be using it for analyzing different things across the organization and university. So this proposal is asking for the backing and support to initiate the process of modernizing the mainframe by fiscal year 22-23. We want to do this by taking the time that we have now to make sure that we could properly assess all of the tasks and initiatives to make sure that we are taking full advantage of all the opportunities now. So then when the actual project is completed, we'll have enough time to focus on it later. This is what the critical path, or CPM, is. It is a sequence of scheduled events that determines the longest duration of this project. So we want to identify all of these key points that have dependencies to make sure that that is the critical path. Every other thing can be done before, since they do not have a dependency or require any precedent to complete. There are many benefits of using CPM. It improves future planning to make sure that we have a proper project set up. It facilitates resource management, so we will know exactly what is needed and when it will be needed, and it helps avoid bottlenecks since we'll be properly prepared down the road. As you can see, this is the current timeline of where we are. This fiscal year 2024 is the data hub when we would expect to be completed. You would expect the university to start looking at gathering feedback on modernization, gathering quotes, and looking at proof of concepts. With all of this, it should take us to fiscal year 2029. I feel like this is a great opportunity to use the critical path method. And with that, you would see that the switch in the actual activities and tasks will move before. So we will be able to start in fiscal year 22-23, and this will cut down the ultimate timeline to 26, which is a 2 to 3 year difference. There are many benefits that come along with using CPM and ultimately reaching our goal of a modernized mainframe. We would have reduced human error, which will impact our data harmonizing between the different applications that we use. This will increase our budget forecasting opportunities and ultimately help our decision-making processes. With every set of benefits, there are a set of threats that go along with this. We will continue to be inefficient. We'll continue to be disorganized, and we'll continue to have a impeded reporting capacity. And if the time we take to not do this could increase by using inflation, demand, and also just supply as well. As the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day. They were laying bricks every hour. Yes, Darrell.
I asked, of course, as a CFO, I would see nothing more than this particular project before long overdue. I gleaned from the methodology you're describing there could be many other practical applications.
Yes.
Can you talk about that just a bit?
Yes, so using this application, yes, using the critical path method for other applications within the university can be helpful for anything because we'll be able to process, manage exactly what's needed. So let me give you an example. We want to build a house. You just don't start putting up the walls. You have to set the foundation first. Everything else goes along. Then you put the roof or the walls, the roof, everything in between. But then there are also aspects of the house like the front, grass and everything like that. That's not a part of the critical path. That could be done elsewhere. That could be done before. That could be done after. And that's the fact of making sure that if we're able to get the critical path within other projects of this organization, we'll be able to make sure that we're cutting down on the actual time of the main project itself. Did that answer your question? Yes. Yes.
The way you've described it, it's very clear that this is a good method. Why do you think many projects don't use this to find their path to completion?
So it requires an actual defined project. If you don't have a defined project of what's your end goal, a lot of people tend to just disregard the critical path and move to other project management strategies. Since this is a big project all on its own, and there's a lot of plan A to plan B to plan C to plan D, you actually know what needs to be done in what order, so then you could actually plan for it ahead of time rather than we have all these things coming up, what's our next step? That's all the time I have. Any other questions? We could talk later.
Hi, I'm Melissa Street. I work for Records and Information Management Services, and I'm going to talk to you all today about creating an information governance community of practice here at UT to help us reduce risk, help us have better compliance, and make information management easier, more efficient, and hopefully fun. So before we talk about information, I want to bring you all back to Biology 101 and looking at a cell. Thinking about the cell, all the different parts of the cell have a different job. Energy comes into the cell, the parts of the cell are managing it, they're using it, they're packaging it, they're cleaning it up, they're transforming it, they're getting rid of it, right? So if a cell is functioning well, this is great, but sometimes there are inefficiencies, maybe the different parts of the cell can't communicate quite as well as they'd like, and if that cell gets stressed, you get sick. That's not good. So instead of energy, I want you to think of that as information, and all of the parts of the cell as parts of the university that manage information. There's a lot of them, right? So what happens when this cell gets stressed? Well, failure to fulfill open records requests, failure to fulfill audits, lawsuits, fines, loss of reputation. These are all things that can and have happened to universities across America, but this is something that we would like to avoid, right? So how do we actually make our cell resilient? How do we keep this from happening? Really, the key is to be preventative rather than curative. Let's put something in place now to help keep it resilient so that if we have a stressor, we can stand up to that. We know we're not going to have an issue, rather than trying to scramble in the end to go, oh my gosh, something's broken, we need to patch it up. Well, that sounds good, right? Okay, we solved it. Wait. What does that preventative care actually look like for information? And that's information governance. Information governance is a holistic approach to managing information. It looks at that information throughout its entire life. You're creating it, you're using it, you're storing it, you're protecting it, you're disposing of it. All of these different things are information governance. And information governance is a really nice, unified, holistic approach to information management throughout its entire life cycle. So information governance sounds cool, but how do we actually bring a space for information governance here at UT? By creating a community of practice, to bring information governance here to UT. And a community of practice is a group of people that come together and share a common interest, a problem, a goal, a question. They come together and they talk about that. They talk about those issues, they answer those questions, they try to solve those problems, and they work together to bring their expertise into a space and collaborate. There are already some existing good communities of practice or community of practice-like groups at the university. The IT Leadership Council, the EdTech Coalition, the Graduate Coordinator Network. There's the WebPub group, the IT Talk. They're already doing great work. There are already existing models for this. We know it works. But we don't currently have a really holistic, true information governance group at UT. By creating a community of practice and assigning a full-time employee partial time to manage this community, make sure it actually continues, make sure that everybody's brought to where they need to be, make sure that guidance can be created, we can really create a great supporting system for the university. This community can help create guidance, actually create it. What is a checklist that a new employee needs to know about their information? You start at the university and you get a checklist. Here you go. Here's what you need to know to be in compliance. And you can feel confident that all of that information is there and that it's been really universally looked at. It's also a really great opportunity for people to bring their questions to a space where everyone is represented. Say you're replacing an old system, you're replacing an old software. What do you need to know about the records held in that system? What do you need to know about the compliance of that system? What do you need to know about the IT requirements for that system? What do you need to know about compliance requirements? There's a lot, right? So you have to go to all of those different spaces. You have to try to figure out where you need to go, who you need to talk to. Sometimes things get left out. You start the new system, you get halfway down the road and you realize, oh no, we didn't talk to this group, and now I think there may be an issue. So the community is a really great opportunity to bring your question and get everyone involved in answering that question right off the bat. But not only is it beneficial for, outside of the group, it's also beneficial for us to all learn about what we're doing. Learn about what everybody's working on. We're all working on really fabulous things, so we should be sharing that with each other. It's an opportunity to share. It's an opportunity for records management to know what IT is doing. It's an opportunity for compliance to know what records management is doing. It's a really great opportunity for us to learn and create a culture of learning here at UT. When we work together, we can make a huge difference. We're much stronger together. So let's create a space for that to help support the university and create better service and stewardship for the university. Thank you. So I think I probably have about 2 minutes for questions, and then I will definitely be here if you have any questions afterwards. Yes?
In your research, did you see any examples of other communities of practice at the university that are working really well using a similar model or even a different model?
Yeah, I know that I talked to a few people oh, yes. So there are some already existing communities of practice or like similar groups, especially in IT. There are a lot of really great functioning groups. I know I talked to someone who oversees the EdTech Coalition, and they said that they've been having really great success with that and that it's really been able to grow. So it's a really nice flexible space. I know there's a compliance leadership group as well, and they work on that. And then the Graduate Coordinator Network is a great one where like they can be a really great voice for students and graduate students and really be a good supporting system for each other. So there are some existing ones already. Yeah.
There's probably some gatekeepers who benefit from not having a community of practice. Can you talk to anyone about strategies for breaking that down?
Yeah, so I'm sure there are some sort of people, as the question was, there are some gatekeepers that may benefit from not having a community. I did talk to a few people about really getting good engagement. It really is at the core of it a compliance issue. Having good compliance is something I think we could all agree is good, but it's really a compliance issue. So really engaging with the fact that it's compliance, but also that it's going to make it a lot more efficient for us all to do our jobs if you go to one place and you can say, hey, you don't have to hunt down that person. They're right there. They're in that group. You can just ask them, or they know exactly who you need to talk to. So it's really about making it easier. The goal is to really make it easier for us all. I think that's probably my time. So thank you all so much.
Hi, my name is Mary Kemp, and I'm an administrative manager with FAS Business Services. Today I'm going to talk about how we can transform the red tape into a finish line, how we can use efficient and smart approvals, as well as smarter forms and clear guidance to make paperwork at UT a better opportunity. UT can often feel like a nebulous policy pathway. First of all, we have department silos. Different groups will tell you different rules for how to get something done, and oftentimes it's opposing rules. There's not a lot of documentation online for how to do things, and if it is, it's kind of hard to understand if you don't already speak the language. The technology on campus, we have so many options, so many great tools, but we don't often use the right one for the job, and we often use the one that we've been using the longest, so it's not always the best. The afterlife of paperwork. As Alyssa talked to you about, there's a lot of rules for document management on campus, and a lot of times people get to the end, they get the approval they needed, and then they don't follow through, or they don't know what to do. And lastly, we're all really busy. For a lot of us, improving a process is like a back burner project that we'll do someday when we have time. And it just keeps getting delayed to your to-do list or however you manage your time, and we don't ever do it. So I'm going to walk you through the day of an administrative assistant and all the labyrinth of processes they're going to have to handle. So first of all, let's say you have a visiting prospective employee, you have to figure out how to pay them. Somebody tells you to go to the HBP, that's the Handbook of Business Procedures, which you think is going to be exactly what you need. It's not. It's more than likely, it's actually going to tell you what not to do. Then someone says, well, check out Ask Us. Ask Us is a really great tool if you know what you're looking for. If you type very simple language, if you don't know what the policy is called, it may not get what you need. But finally, you figure out that you need a non-vendor PIF. The PIF is a payee information form. Now, despite the fact that you're paying a prospective employee, that's actually in the vendor office. So you get that worked out, everything's fine. You realize a sync is broken, so you need a works request. Now you type in WORKS, works. Wrong, it's the work order request inquiry system with the Q. You finally get that done, and the form has a lot of things you also don't know. What's a building manager? What kind of account you need? Lots of different issues. Next, you need to pay for lunch. You try to fill out an OOEF. That's an official occasions expense form. That's going to come up a lot in my talk, and I'm not picking on the OOEF in particular. It's just that it's a really simple and clear example of why we need to improve forms on campus. When you're doing the OEF, you have to figure out what's a valid account. You have to figure out a lot of things that are confusing. And if you're not familiar with accounts at UT, that's really hard. Next, you have to do your FWA. That's the flexible work arrangement. Seems like it would be in Workday, our great new HR tool. It's not. So you finally figure out which thing you need, and then you do upload it in the end into Workday. Now here I'm going to talk about something really positive, the ISO review. You need to buy some software. I want to give a great shout out to Cam Beasley and Royanna Sagasti, because we now have a really clear policy on what you need to do when you buy software and how to do it. Throughout all of these, you have things like unit heads, account signers, delegates, HR partners. All these people you have to get to sign forms or give you approvals, and you don't always know who those are. At the end of the day, you're confused, you're frustrated, and you're stressed out. And this isn't just administrative assistants. Lots of offices don't have those. This could be a director. This could be a hazmat manager who has something better to do than figure out a form. So how do we fix this? First of all, we should rethink the form. In essence, what is a form? First of all, you have the required information, what people need to make a decision and approve your request. Second of all, we have the actual approval. As we learned during our remote work time, that's not always a signature. Sometimes a legal wet ink signature is required. Lots of times we just have to know that the person who's approving it actually logged in and approved it. And lastly, as I've talked about before, post-finish line. We need to store that document, and we need to make sure that we've kept the right amount of time, not too short, not too long. You don't want to open yourself up to an audit for something that happened in 2008. So I'm going to talk about a tale of two OEFs. This is the standard OEF, and it works really well. I will say that the part in the middle where you have all those lines, you only use if less than 10 people attend, which takes up about a third of your real estate. In addition, you have to know the object code for what you're paying for. And chances are you don't know that unless you're frequently working in finance. You have to actually go to the HPP to see what this means. I deal with this a lot. It has to do with who's attending and what special approvals you might need. And lastly, you have to figure out the signers, which actually varies department to department, and even different rules depending on who's attending. This, however, is the OEF that COLA uses as liberal arts. First of all, it's automated. As you go through, it checks. It tells you if you're doing anything wrong or breaking any rules. If you put in tax or tip that's too large, it tells you right then. In addition, you could add tooltips to tell you what kind of fields you need. And this is built into the request form system, so it will route automatically. You don't have to know who's supposed to sign or why. So how do we move towards improvement? Like I've said, we need to rethink our processes, things like the smarter forms. We can also look at things like policies. Are we using the right policy? Has the policy changed since we made this form, and could we change it? Next, we need simple and clear guidance. A lot of times, it's not an administrative assistant that's filling this out. It's someone really high up, and they just haven't done it in a year. There's a lot of forms you don't use all the time. A training class isn't necessary for that. An example form, maybe a video explaining what's needed and why. And lastly, a centralized web listing. Something that says in simple language, not jargon, what are you trying to do? Here's the form, and here's how to do it. With all of these things, it's going to be a much simpler path. We've gotten rid of the siloing issue by having one central website that shares all of the instructions. We've got training materials that are easy to understand and short and quick so people can clearly find what they need to do. There's smarter forms. It helps you out along the way, and it reduces the need for people to send them back and forth, returning them for errors, or even having to resubmit when you did it wrong. Cloud storage. As Alyssa talked about, people don't always know the right thing to do, and this prevents you from having to deal with it. You don't have to store it, you don't have to make sure the right copy gets to the right place, and you don't have to make sure to get rid of it at the end of retention. And lastly, dedicated staff. If we have dedicated staff dedicated to doing this project, it doesn't take time away from the people who have other things to do, like actually approve these forms. This gets us to the finish line. UT has better forms, and staff have more time to do other things and are less frustrated. Thank you. Take a couple of questions.
Maybe it's more of an observation. Can we just get rid of OEF?
Actually, kind of, yes. I actually learned this. The question was, could we just get to the OEF? And I would love to do that. The OEF actually was originally created for tax purposes to make sure that it's not breaking any tax rules. And over the years, we've added extra things to it to make sure this policy is followed or that policy is followed. And departments across campus have added other things to it. Technically, you don't need it anymore. You could just put a note as to what it was for. Okay. If anybody else has questions, I'd love to talk about it later.
Hello, my name is Emmanuel Shimirimana. I'm Assistant Manager for Night Operations Custodial Services. 8 years ago, a friend of mine informed me that Custodial Services was recruiting. So, and among other benefits that UT was offering was educational benefit. So, as a new immigrant back then, my wife and I decided to join because we value education. We say, even if we have education, but we need education here so that we can move ahead. So we joined September 1st, 2014, both of us. We were 8 in class. But now, unfortunately, I'm the only one here. All the 8, they're no longer here. Even if turnover is not new in custodial services, recently it has been accentuated by a high cost of living, high wages, competitive wages with other private companies. And another thing, a third thing that people don't think about is the talent that we receive in custodial services. Custodial services, we recruit a lot of talents, people from outside the country that have to start from somewhere, regardless of their education background. They come in custodial services. Students from high school, they have talent, but they have to start from somewhere. They come in custodial services. Those are opportunities. And those are people that we cannot contain in custodial services. They cannot settle for a job of just a cleaning job. This proposal, I'm proposing a way UT can use to mitigate, to embrace the turnover rate and mitigate it, and turn all those opportunities into assets. Currently in custodial services, around 55% have been here less than 5 years. And most of those less than a year. Those are revolving doors. Those are people that are gonna leave, candidate to leave all the time. The proposal here is a combination of 3 things that will help custodial UT to turn those turnover into assets. The first of all is to support our current employees. They need the support. They're tired. They work tirelessly. Another thing is to create an advising program, a career advising program that is practical. And the third is to create certification for cleaning services. We have people that are experienced, but we don't have a school for certificate to clean a floor, to make it shine the way you see it, to clean this carpet, maintain it. We can use those. Why part-time job? Executives have been helping us to try to maintain the turnover or to overcome the turnover. We have 3 recruiters that are working tirelessly, trying to improve, try to recruit. We always recruit, but we lose people as we recruit them. For example, last month, we recruited 20. That's a lot, but we lost 20 as well. That's a net 0. We have to accept this reality. When you are paying $15 an hour, when your competitors are paying more, even internally, you were just a secondary job. You cannot keep people for 15 when they can get more outside. So we need to create a part-time that is flexible. Our employee, the employee who's gonna clean after us here, they're now working another job. They're gonna show up at 5:30 to start working here, another 8 hours. That's too much for someone who wants just a part-time job. That's why the flexible part-time job, a non-beneficial, benefit eligible part-time, 19 hours, will help us. At our department, they use it. Food and housing, they use it. College of Science and Natural Science, they use it. We can create flexible. We have people who are working in all around UT, Austin. They have a full-time job, 8 to 5, but they cannot survive with that. They needed something. They need flexible. So that's what we can target. We have a lot of students here. They can use that 5 hours a day job, Monday to Thursday, and work here, and we can use them. They can support our current employees. Another thing is it's a win-win situation. So the TRS, I think, in a lot of meetings, they complain about TRS deduction. They don't want it. That's a win situation on their side. Because with $15, if you deduct 8%, you stay with 13. That's no bueno. Another thing on UT side, we don't pay benefits. And another thing, we recruit easily. We can terminate contract easily. And the work of HR, it gets limited. Those payrolls, those terminations. Another logistics, we can partner with an existing company, department that use it, and we can have experience on that. And we have a workload system that works really good. We can work with that. The second thing is to create a job advising, a career advising. This career advising, we will need someone dedicated for that. The reason why everyone left is because they could not see their future. Even my wife could not see her future here. They could not settle for the cleaning job. The reason I stayed is because I was becoming someone. I think same with many of you. You don't stay for high pay. You stay because you see that you're improving. Let's create the opportunity for them. Let's create the opportunity for these immigrants that are coming. Let's create the opportunities for those high school students who can be a good admin. It is really hard to keep admin. How is it hard to keep software developer? How is it hard to keep desktop support specialist? It's really hard, and it's gonna stay really hard. How is it difficult to become a software developer if you already have a background in software? How is it easy to become a desktop support when you went to college and get credentials? It's easy. It's just CompTIA test. Then you get the career you want. So with the support of the employee who's going to be in charge of this program, they can identify where we need people in facility, in FAS, in the whole FAS. Then they can target the talents we have in custodial services, for example. It can work with any department to develop them toward those targeted careers. So it's a win-win situation. The last one is, let me talk about how it works. So custodial services will benefit from the time the employee is going to stay here for the training. They get qualified for 1 year. After 1 year, they get in the program for another year. They start doing the internship. So custodial service has that person motivated, staying here, working. Then after that, when they pass and they get a job in another department, they're going to stay in that department. Guess what? They are vested. They already passed 3 years over here, and guess what? They're not going to leave. They're going to stay. The last one, we have a lot of people in custodial service do data cleaning, and they are specialists. We can help them too. Austin is growing. Cost of life is going high. But with the right certification, we can provide credentials for their floor cleaning specialists, for their window cleaning. Then they can thrive outside. Then they can do better. I will leave you with this. UT, we have opportunities. Custodial service is not only a cleaning area. They can start there and get where they want to go. We are able to do that. We are able to educate them. And that's our opportunity. It is also our responsibility to educate them and to get them where they want. Thank you very much. I'll take a couple questions. Yes, ma'am. Yes, they do. In housing and dining, they use a lot of students. Can you repeat the question? Oh, the question was, do you see any success, right, in the part-time? Yes, there is. In housing and dining, they'll be using, they still have it in fall and spring semester. They use a lot of students, and it's really successful. There's no high turnover in there because they want to work, and it's just limited time. They can't commit for 5 hours every day or 4 hours. That's something we can also do. I don't know if I answered your question. Oh, yes, you had a question.
I was just going to ask, do you have any examples of success stories from people that you know or even yourself, kind of how the progression happened for these people?
Oh, you mean those who left? Or?
Those who stayed.
Oh, they're just a little number. My boss there, Andy, I'm assistant for Andy. We were going through numbers. One thing is the past 10 years, we have 46 people who are still here for the past 10 years. And guess what? Only 2 are no leaders. The other 44, they are leaders. What does it say? It says that they stayed because they saw that there's an opportunity. So only one among the 2, he just transferred like a couple months ago. So now it's only one left without a promotion and still on custody on BA2 level. That's what I say. I stayed. So it's not only the pay, it's also what you're becoming. Let's create that for them. Yeah, I don't know if I have time to take. Oh yeah, Bridget.
Real quick, Danielle, if you could just tell the group, how many folks do you have in custodial services?
Oh, now we have BA2s, we have 244. And I don't know about the end of the day, how many we're gonna have. Yeah. So, yes. I don't know if that was.
Nighttime, do you know how many you have during the day? About 50 or so?
Yes, so it was 51, but they have 2 vacancies, so that's 49. Yes.
The big number.
Yes. Yeah. And we have 8 people today in the training, and 2 of them, one is a master's degree holder, and another one is bachelor's degree holder. I didn't meet them yet, I know just their resume. Another one is carpenter, but without the implementation of something like this, I don't see them staying. I don't see their motivation to stay. So yeah, that's why we came up with this. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, y'all. I'm the last one, so you can make it through this one. I know we've got a lot of great stuff talked about today. My name is Laramie Gordon. Most people just call me Gordon. You recognize me. I actually have a collared shirt on today, so you may not recognize me. But I'm also with Facility Services. I'm the Employee Engagement Coordinator. And what Emmanuel was talking about, we talk about every day in Facility Services. But who here has heard of this thing called the Great Resignation over the last 2 years? Yeah, pretty much everybody, right? So let me get off of his thing. Today we're going to talk about demolishing the barriers to staff career fulfillment. So we know that a lot of folks leave because they don't see that progression, right? One of the great things that our director says to every single new employee is, I want this to be a place that you want to retire from. This, whether you stay with our department, whether you move up, whether you're happy where you are and you want to stay, whether you move somewhere else in the university, we want to build that community of learning and of growing and development with our staff all across campus. So I want you all to humor me for a second and close your eyes. I want you to think back to a time, the first time that anyone ever discussed your career path with you. Where were you? Who was that person to you? And did you actually feel satisfied coming out of that meeting, that you knew what you were going to do? You knew the path forward and you were ready to go. You had all the resources you needed. All right, everybody can open their eyes. Raise your hand if you didn't have anything to think of, that nobody's ever had that conversation with you. Okay, so the majority of us in the room have had that privilege to have that conversation, but a lot of our staff on campus haven't. As Emmanuel was talking about, these are conversations that you talk about in annual performance evaluations, but when you're one supervisor doing performance evaluations for 35 people, there's not time for that. You don't have the time to do that. You're not a career expert yourself as a supervisor. We don't provide resources for them to come and know what they need to talk about, to know what questions they need to ask and what the resources are that can come together. So studies have shown in the last few years, and this is not inclusive, this is not UT data, it's very hard to gather UT data on this kind of thing, but just in general in the United States, the top 3 main factors why people leave, everyone always thinks pay. Well, it's not always the highest one. Career and culture. Culture is things like your management. You feel like you belong, you feel like you can see a progression in where you are, that you're being supported to the fullest, and that you can grow within that group. So it's not always pay. Pay is also something we don't have a lot of control over at the supervisor individual level. Our resources are restrained, but we work at a university, higher education. We provide resources to a lot of students around careers. Obviously, it's different for staff. We're going to go through a scenario. So say I'm a supervisor and I have an employee doing a performance evaluation, and they say, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I want to do something. This person's motivated, they're taking initiative to want to grow. Well, as an individual supervisor, you're like, Val, you feel like you can talk to somebody in facilities? They should all know that they can come talk to me. But we are one department within a large organizational structure. And I've spent 10 years understanding who are the people to go to talk to. Am I going to bring them to Emil's team? And if it's something like that, where are they coming from? What do they actually need? How can we place them with the groups? So most of the time, raise your hand if you have had an awesome employee ask you for career support and you were like, I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that because I have to go talk to somebody. No? Okay. Y'all are lying because I know. At least you have something, but you don't have that comprehensive picture of what the resources really are on campus. You don't have a way to assess those. So what can we do to streamline that process, centralize support, and really make these careers advancement available to all of our employees? Career advancement was in the new strategic plan and the diversity plan 34 times. And a lot of them were talking about staff. And it's creating that culture where we want to stay. We want employees to stay at the university. And having a structured plan, like Emmanuel's talking for custodial services, is really helpful for entry-level folks. But a lot of these are going to be one-off. You know, you have one employee here, it's a supervisor, who wants to be a manager, it's a manager who wants to be an associate director and move up. And you don't need to have a full structured process for that, but you need to have resources so that you can connect the people with those resources. So what can we do? We're going to knock down these barriers, right? So we can do that with some centralized support. We can capitalize on the resources that we have available already all around campus. You know, being a career coach is a multi-billion-dollar industry. When I started researching for this project, I started getting so many ads on purchasing a career coach, getting a career coach, but it was a one-on-one thing. And even, I don't know how they're always listening, but they found a way to put ads in my game where I just run a lumber mill. I don't know if anybody knows this game, but there's just like randomly ads thrown in there for career coaching. Right. So it's something that people are specialized in, and we have a lot of supervisors and other resources on campus that have those pieces. What we need to do is we need to bring them together. So all of you are saying, you know, I know about this thing that's over there. We know about learning and development. We know about organization effectiveness, strategic workforce solutions, all of the acronyms underneath the UT umbrella. But we don't have that central person for them to go to say, when a supervisor has someone come to them, they say, yes, you go to this person and they will take care of it. They will help you understand what it is that you need. They'll connect you with who you need to be connected with. And it can also relieve a lot of the stress from those different pockets of folks that are trying to do this without having all of the experience. I do a lot of career coaching, well, not a whole lot, but I do career coaching for facility services employees. And there's some things that I'm stronger on than others, you know, depending on what it is they need. I look over resumes all the time, right? That's something I feel pretty comfortable with. If you go to learning and development, you can hear me talk for an hour about interviews and resumes and cover letters. But I don't know all of the things, especially when it's someone higher up than even myself. I'm like, I haven't got there yet. I don't know how to get you there, right? So I have to rely on these other resources and I have to know who they are. So we have all of these different resources that are already available. What we need is one person to understand the wealth of resources that staff have availability to. They can create those processes to intake, streamline a process that can help assess where they're going, what they need, and be able to place them with where they need to go. And we can do that with one person to run a program support for staff careers, something like a staff career specialist, right? Who can just be a source of information and a source of knowledge that people can go to when they need help. So we want it to not be so complicated for folks, right? That's when it's simple, it makes life so much easier and less stressful, right? So we want to knock down those barriers and make this a place that people want to retire from. Thank you. All right, I have a couple minutes for questions, if anybody has any questions. Yes, sir.
So it looks like you're focused mainly on the facility services area. Have you talked with other units outside of facility services? Like, how can you take facility service employees and then transition them into different roles, maybe in IT or other things like that?
Yeah, so the question was, have we worked with other groups, or have I talked to other groups about preparing our folks for jobs outside of facilities specifically? And that's usually what I'm doing, is I'm the person that's getting them ready to leave facilities a lot of the time, because, you know, the way our structure works, and if we don't have a lot of turnover in certain areas, it's hard to get a person ready to go in there. This is a great program, LGP, but there's only 8 of us. Right, and they go do 8 to 10 people a year. We have 20,000 staff on campus. I actually had a meeting with a custodial employee last week who wants to get into IT. And so we're working through with him on identifying, you know, there's all these different tracks within IT, right? It's a pretty broad umbrella. He wants to get into software development. So we're looking at resources for that. And once we get him prepared and set up and get all the resources, he's probably going to leave. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. Any other questions? Yes.
Besides education, stuff like that, have any organizations cross-trained, like allowing, materials handler or custodian going over utilities as an official apprentice and actually take them on for a week?
We lost a lot of folks during the pandemic because we did this with our landscape. The question was cross-training, like about what is cross-training available to do, like on the job without someone actually having to take a new job. If they're just interested in it, they want to learn more about it. And I was saying we did. We lost some folks in landscape and integrated building services because, like, the events and moving team, there wasn't a lot of events or any events that were even allowed to happen early on in the pandemic. And so basically we lent them over to some other groups, and they were awesome in those new groups, and PMCS took them from us. So thanks. Yeah, but I hope that you have some great employees now over there that we were able to get started at UT for you. So there's all sorts of things like that. I would love to eventually have some sort of shadowing type of program for that specific thing, just so you don't have to take that full leap in. You can kind of get your feet wet with it. Any other questions? There's only, yeah.
A lot of people have been here, like you were saying, I don't know how to get there. I haven't got there yet. A lot of people have been there and may be thrilled that someone would care to know how they got there, to hear that story, but don't necessarily know how to connect to you or others, share that, and kind of pass it, pay it back, pay it forward. And so do you consider kind of ways that you might leverage that kind of latent knowledge out there?
So the question was, have we leveraged latent knowledge of folks that have made that? So I know Emmanuel talks to folks on how he, made that progression. And I'll defer to Emil's plethora of things that he does, but the FAS Manager Spotlights is one of those things where we're trying to get the story out there of folks that have been here and have progressed in their careers within UT, just in general. And then I know that there's also been talks and, checking out to see if we can do any sort of like mentorship types of things. That's a logistical nightmare for anybody who's ever ran a mentoring program. But it is important, and it is something that can help people feel like they can see a path forward. All right, I think that's all the time I have for questions. I'll be out there to talk.
Okay, thanks everybody, and thanks to our presenters. We're going to do a really quick ceremony to hand out the certificates, but I know that our Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer would like to have a few words before we hand out those certifications. Please welcome Daryl Bazell.
Great. Thank you so much, Emil. Wow, really inspiring. So thanks so much for your presentations this afternoon and for sharing your capstone projects. And really appreciate the investment you're making in yourselves, right? And thinking deeply about your areas of work and how we can make those better. Great examples. In just a moment, you're going to join some of the graduates of the program in the past, and that's going to be an exciting moment for you and for us. All of you are great examples of why it's important to make investments in learning and development opportunities for our employees. We talk about it a lot as an institution, but all of you are shining examples of the kind of investments we want to make in our future leaders. I think Gordon talked about this being all over the campus strategic plan, and that's exactly right. There's no question about that. All of us as leaders and managers, we need to make those investments to give our staff opportunities to grow and to create those career paths. And I couldn't have paid Emmanuel or Gordon any more money than the examples they gave, how about it's not just beneficial to them as committed employees, but how the institution itself will benefit by virtue of providing in a more intentional and systematic way opportunities for all. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Elmo and his team, who just do an incredible job. Yeah. Right. Not just with this program, but with very few resources, the incredible things you do all across this institution. And for those who are part of the leadership team, we're going to grow MO staff in ways that will benefit this portfolio and will benefit this institution. And we just need to make greater investment in these areas. And so we have to sometimes put our money where our mouth is, right, Emil? And so we're doing that right now. And we need to have many more opportunities than for just the handful of folks who are getting direct benefits, and by extension, all of us will see lots and lots of tangible benefits for some time to come. So I'm energized. I'm excited about what's next for all of you. And with that, let me turn things back over to Elmo so you can get your certificate and take those important next steps in your careers.
Thank you so much, Daryl. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so the moment you've all been waiting for. So if you could, when I read off your name, if you could come up and I just want to remind people that we will have some time afterwards. So please, as you have time, remember to join us in the atrium and out in the hallway. There's plenty of food left over, and talk with each other, talk with the graduates, wish them congratulations, and we appreciate your time. So first, want to welcome Jed Krieger for his Capstone Project Champion Staff Creativity. Congratulations, good job. Next, we'd like to welcome congratulations to Eric Wilson for his Capstone Project Tracking Chemical Risk. Great job, Eric. Adrian Young for slashing the timeline of enhanced financial data access. Good job, buddy. Congratulations. Alyssa Street for collaborative information management. Good job, Alyssa. Thank you. Mary Kemp for transforming paperwork and red tape into a finish line. Congratulations, Mary. And Emmanuel Nushimiramana for embracing and mitigating employee turnover. Great job. Great job. And finally, Laramie Gordon, demolishing barriers to staff career fulfillment. Congratulations to our graduates. Everybody, please welcome the FAS Leadership Growth Program class of 2022. And thank you all for everything, for making the time for this important event. I welcome your encouragement to these people and to this program, and I thank you for your continued support for learning and development. Thank you.